Wilka Nascimento. I am the Leadership Talks podcast host. And today I have Fiona McDonnell. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Very happy to be here, Milka.
Oh my gosh, Fiona, I have to say you are like my hero, my super, I'm a huge fan. I look up to you and I'm super,
Thank you.
excited to be, having this time with you because I know you're a very busy person. So I just wanted to, share some appreciation and I'm really grateful that you accepted, the invitation to be on the podcast today.
You're most welcome. Very happy to spend time with you. You're also a busy person too.
So, Fiona, introduce yourself to the listeners of the Leadership Talks podcast. I know a little bit of your background, but I wanted to hear from you from, an author, a business executive, a mom. So, how do you embrace, how do you introduce yourself on your speaking engagements?
Yeah, I tend to start off with all of me. I am a mom. I have two kids, married to a Dutch guy, living here in the Netherlands. I'm a business leader, and I've been in and around consumer goods and hospitality and digital sort of marketplaces for more than 30 years. At the moment, I'm currently a VP of partner services at Booking.com, which you may know. But today I'm here as myself and as an author because am interested as a leader in helping to develop and inspire people, particularly. And today I have my small little book with me. Two Mirrors and a Cheetah. Think differently, own your career, and succeed by being yourself, which is something I never planned to write, but got into a couple of years ago. And so today I'm here sharing my thoughts on career development and that.
Oh my goodness. And I must say, every time now I'm obsessed, right, with the book. And then I'm like, well, I had like 13 hours on a flight. I was like, I think I have like 8 hours or 6 hours to listen left on my audiobook. So let me have my 101 with Fiona on my plane, right? And I have to say, literally, I love that, you do the voice as well on the audiobook, because for sure, like I feel so excited that it feels that I'm in the room talking to you. And I was like, oh, I've done that. Oh yeah, I forgot about, these other steps. So how, for people that are listening to us, that don't know anything about, your book, what would you say besides the career inspiration, right, that the book brings to the listening or to the reader, that your book is focused on?
Yeah, so the irony that you feel I'm talking to you when I'm doing the audiobook, my idea started after many speeches. So I was talking quite often at talks for women, inspiring people, and I had sat listening to so many talks thinking, well, that's nice, but that's never going to fit to my situation because my situation and my surroundings or opportunities may be different. So when I started doing the same thing back for other audiences myself, I always look to think, what could I talk about in my career that is tangible so people can transfer what I've learned for themselves? So it became okay, here's what I think, and I'll use my own experience because I can pull it apart very brutally because it's mine to do so. And so I can be vulnerable and share the ups and, of course, the big downs and the learnings in my career. But when I eventually put it on paper, because I wasn't planning on writing a book, I was actually talking a lot about authenticity, and I've been driving diversity in the different companies I've worked at prior to now. I was leading, excuse me, I was executive sponsor for diversity at Amazon when I was in the UK. And so I was doing a bit more of this with the idea of how do you bring your whole self to work? And the more I talked about that, I was realizing that the times I was better and fulfilled and succeeding in my career were when those two things came together. And so using my storytelling, because I like to get on the stage, I'm happy talking. In fact, I'm alive when I'm trying to inspire people on a stage. I put those together, and it was my stories that I basically re-recorded and made a book of to help people find a way of deconstructing the messiness and being themselves, understanding themselves, and then being able to move and deal with change without losing who they were in the process.
And I love this piece that you do share your stories of your challenges that you encounter through your career. One piece that I see myself as well is when you talk about, hey, I lived in the UK, but then I went to Poland. So
Yeah.
I think like the culture awareness, right? Like when you get into a new role and also your background as an engineer. So like
Yeah.
how does how does your mind work actually?
I think we're all different. And for me, the engineer thing, I studied things I was good at school, and it helped me get better results. But I like the playful side of actually having application of what I learned. And I was no good at history because I couldn't see the point of it. Well, years later, I now, do. And so that helped me think and see things practically. So I've always done stuff like that, but I was always erring towards the commercial side. I found it more tangible, and I've always worked with companies that I can have in my cupboards at home, or services I use, so I don't have to pretend to like stuff. So I have that base enjoyment of what I'm doing. But I like to get more than just a job out of stuff. I want to enjoy what I'm doing and having excitement. And with the Poland thing, I was on maternity leave when the opportunity came to me. And my husband and I accepted the job and to move to another country without having been to that country. And I didn't speak the language at the time. But it was overridden by my sense of adventure, taking over to go to a new country, a new language, discover some stuff. Oh, yeah, and there'll be a job going on at the same time. So I had like a tote bag on one arm and a maxi cozy with a 6-month-old baby on the other hand, and we went because I chose to fit things into what I was doing rather than turn my life upside down to fit them round the other way. And that appealed to us both, and off we went. And it turned out to be one of the best experiences I've had.
Oh my goodness. I have not been in Poland, so after, listening to all of this experience, definitely made me put a Poland on the bucket list here that in Wilco's world, it's quite long.
It's funny you when you know about places you read about, when you get there they're often different, and I was humbled that the place was very different than what I had expected, and it was full of friendly people, a very different adventure, and it's still fondly on my list. And my second son was born there, so yeah, fun place in our house.
Wow, that's so cool. That part is not on the book, I can say. But it also, I like my favorite piece, my favorite chapter is when you say feedback. You have to
Yes.
ask for feedback so you can get yourself into the next level, right? And then you get the information and you work on yourself to become a better professional.
Yeah.
And one part actually, when I listened to that, I did a project myself and I said, I think I'm great, right? Like you can say that to yourself every day, oh, but other people might say, hey, you have maybe a piece of, even on the podcast, right? Like I ask people for feedback and I'm like, can you give me some feedback? Yeah, you just say this word too many times. So it's like, oh yeah, I didn't notice that. So I feel the feedback piece is so important in the career, but also, right, in a personal life, because you can think you're great all day, you want all day long, but if you don't listen to other people or perceiving of you as well, that can be challenging. So, talk to us about this particular piece
Yeah.
from the book.
Yeah, and it's not just about thinking you're fabulous. Many times people don't think they're good enough, and actually hearing feedback from others gives you what you need to go, I am good enough. So it's a two-sided coin here. But when it comes to feedback, I believe it's a luxury, but many people don't seek it out because they may feel they hear things they don't want to hear. And in the many years I've taken feedback, it's good to hear some's uncomfortable, but the really transformational feedback is the stuff you don't want. And actually, I challenge people to think who you want feedback from, and then who you would not think of asking, and go and ask them anyway, because they can give you what you can't see. And it's about understanding, really importantly, not just what you see of yourself, which is important, and to get the right image there, but also to understand how you impact others and how they perceive you, because perception is reality. It's not just if you go through life thinking one thing and others see you as something else, you're waiting to sort of walk into a wall of, crashed expectations, or somehow, finding that things didn't stack up like that. But the big sort of secret is get as much feedback as you can, or take it when it's coming and learn how to take it and dust it down when it's harsh, or actually give it and, take it gratefully when you get the good stuff. But you have a choice whether you act on feedback from others. So making sure you understand and are open to it is one good thing, so people know you're listening. But you don't have to act on everything. And that's one of my dimensions of the mirror, that when you look at yourself, it's just you in there, and your self-belief, holding on to it is primary thing to do, rather than throwing it out with the bathwater because somebody says you rubbish at things. But also, You can choose what works and what you should be aware of, but you choose maybe not to focus on it right now. But it's about being aware. Acting on it should be stuff you'd like to change, because somebody may not like me in the way I do, I don't know, certain presentations, or they may not like my accent, or my, I guess today, my hand using on the screen, right? But I can acknowledge that without fundamentally changing it if I don't want to. But if it's feedback where I find my style of working is getting in the way of others, which came up halfway through my career, where I was maybe a bit too specific in some areas, or where I didn't see where softness was needed in a different way, and I had to slow down and change my approach. That becomes more important when you start to manage people. You need to show and be able to learn and hear and adapt for other people. And then the icing on the cake really is when you can get different feedback and know where it's coming and be able to adapt to different situations and different people. I think that really puts you in control of your skills and who you are, rather than somebody that's stilted and going backwards and forwards depending on what people need from you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I love this point of take us with, if you feel that you can be better, right? And then if it's a harsh, you just dust it off and keep moving, right? It's definitely two-side mirror, like you said, but also another point of the book that I love is when you manage people and then
Mhm.
when you manage the manager. I love that part. And I'm like, you gave like some real examples. I just feel, and of course, I think throughout our careers, in hospitality and business, or why not, uh, your style might not be appreciated, but also again coming back to the culture, right? Like maybe like for me after this pandemic, situation was like, I'm a hugger. I like people, right? I need to be seen by people, and I'm Brazilian, so it's like I'm coming to meet you. I'm giving you a hug. I'm giving you a kiss, and I'm like, hey, so excited, because this is who I am, and I grew up this way, right? So it's not that I'm trying to be over barrier, or I'm trying to cross that line, but I
Yeah.
had definitely like to hold back in a few aspects. So
Yeah.
I wanted to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, the funny thing about, well, managing the manager or being aware of it, if people start with the idea that managers can't be told anything and that they, have it sorted, and people who work for a manager are just stuck with it, I think that's the wrong start point. If I take myself as a manager and as a leader, I've got better also with feedback from those people who work for me, because they see a different, or for or with me. It's not, it's a much more collegiate way we do things. But it's another angle that you may not naturally see. And I think I would like to encourage people in the book that just because you experience bad managers or ineffective managers or bad managers who work differently to you, I don't always say that's negative, but sometimes there can be real just differences, and it's about having a conversation. Start with the idea that your manager will be open to it, because leaders who are good leaders want to improve. Therefore, your feedback is welcome. And sometimes you don't know until you ask. People may be horrified that they're coming across in a certain way, as I was once, rather than intending to do it and wanting you to have those consequences. So dare to sort of put things to a manager's attention, and you might actually surprise yourself in finding how some of the managers are open to fixing it for you, because we achieve as leaders through other people. Therefore, it's our interest that people are happy, etc. So it's breaking down that stereotype of assuming that the bad boss is just not there. But even when it's a terrible situation, or if you feel unfairly treated, etc., my advice is to raise it rather than actually put up with feeling that you never did anything about it, because that will fuel the bad managers to go on to treat people worse. And we need to stop those patterns before they get big and people build the idea that these things work. So a bit of a bravery ask in there too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So how did you come up, of this topic now, but it's still in the book, like Two Mirrors and a Cheetah? How did you come up with the name? And I love also the analogy of, how the cheetah attacks, right? Because it's a predator.
It
So
is, it
I'm
is.
I'm
No,
I'm
it's a
curious.
where I came up with it. I mean, part of it is oops, session thing. So part of the name is really, it's a formula. If I was to say, how do you look at getting fulfillment or feeling fulfilled in your career? mirror one plus mirror two plus a cheetah. It's a very playful and different set of metaphors. And so at the end of the day, it was something I did to be different, to demonstrate what I'm saying, which is there's no rules for it. It doesn't have to be boring textbook about how to do your career. There's some frameworks, but it's hopefully memorable in a different way. And mirror one is a metaphor for really understanding yourself and looking deep at who you are for self-awareness. The mirror two is a sort of play on um, the mirror on the wall and the way that a mirror basically puts down this ice queen, even if she is the villain, and putting your self-belief on people's words. And the cheetah, which I guess is my favorite aspect, inspired me because there's so much of the animal kingdom which we see and we look at and we call things second nature. And the idea of second nature means a good thing that is a habit. And yet birds fly south for the winter, right? Why are we putting up with stuff as humans in a, let's say, work world that doesn't work for us, where the animal kingdom doesn't give a second thought to it? They simply move. And I watched this cheetah on the telly with my kids years ago. And as I saw the whole thing, I thought, there's this tiny little sort of feline cat, and there's this big backdrop of all these gazelles or wildebeest. And, you know, how on earth is that going to come out good? But of course, the cheetah, who's very known for their top speed, in fact, many companies choose a cheetah in marketing for the speed, knows that skill, but she also knows she's got like 20 seconds before she burns out. And if she doesn't know that or think about it, she would be the prey in the situation. And so the cheetah weighs that up and other things like the temperature, how well she's rested, the lay of the land, etc. And when it doesn't work to set her up for success, she walks away because the consequences would be too much. And it's that thing that made me sit up and think, when do we recognize stuff is not set up for us and walk away from it? We seem to be, as people, set in our ways, and we assume it's happened to us. We go victim, and we don't think, actually, what are the choices I have? How could I think of moving or changing things to put myself in the right situation that it's lined up for the best effect? Yeah. And so that was just a sort of metaphor where I think the cheetah and the way you should actually strategically look at what's in your environment and particularly think about what you need. And I call about what you need from a manager, from a company, and from a job. Don't just look at the job, but recognize the environment around you is probably more a piece of your success and failure than the other stuff that we obsess on.
Yeah, yeah, like let's just stop sweating about the small stuff and let's get to the point what makes you happy, right? What makes you authentic. And
Yeah.
talking about that authenticity, um, I wanted to hear your brief explanation on what is leadership for you, Fiona.
Leadership for me is at the core of it is being the best example I can every day. I'm not trying to make it look perfect, of simply, you know, doing what's in front of me. But it has the elements of I'm inspired by the big picture and setting a vision for people. But the way I go about getting stuff done is removing hurdles for other people so people can be themselves and their best. And if I can actually do those two things, I feel like I'm actually making a difference. So leadership for me is, um, yeah, doing it better than I may have had it happen to me in terms of making sure I do the right thing, even when people aren't looking, that classic thing, but with a way that inspires people to want to do stuff. Because life's too short to spend it doing something you don't like and with people you don't like.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And the more it's so funny you talk about this, and you know, the more I do the podcasts and I ask these questions from different leaders, and it can be, like a hotel general manager or a leader from, Puerto Rico or people, they have the fundamental, right? Like I get a little bit of piece of everybody that I talk to. Even lately, I had Lou, on the podcast, and he said, I'm a servant leader, right? So
Yeah.
I work for people that, uh, are surrounded by me, in the organization, or I want people to be their best. So, because that way, that's how you get fulfilled, right?
Yeah,
And
what do people need? It's, I think the word is needs. You know, we think about in businesses consumer needs all the time, but then when you look at it, employees, teammates, etc., or yourself, we all have needs, but we kind of push that to the side and treat it in a different way. So I'm different in a different leadership role, depending on what people need from me and what the situation also needs from me. And then I'll join my dots to solve the problems.
yeah, yeah, wow, amazing. I have to make notes. I have to rewatch at all times. So I'm curious, do you have any other career inspirational book coming up? What's going on in that end?
I know I might have a second one, just because I never planned to write the first one and it was painful, but I have ideas. I write on LinkedIn, which you're welcome to follow, which I think you do. I'm inspired by daily life and doing things different. And as so long as I have ideas to share, who knows, I may put another one into the book, but I'm still very engaged with a full day job, leading teams and doing stuff, which keeps me fulfilled alongside two teenage boys who are growing up and the travel I do and the tennis. And I think it's about being a full person, not just the day job. Whilst the day job is still, a big deal, I try and keep those things together. But there may be up in there at some point.
Hey, watch out, Paulo Coelho, if you know what I mean. Paulo Coelho, actually, he's a Brazilian author, right? And he has published all over the world, and his books is being translated, I don't even know how many times. And I love his stories, like, and I have a couple, collections in Portuguese, in English. But every time I mention him to someone, and I was like, he's Brazilian, like it makes me proud. But also, even with other guest speakers on the podcast, I had probably two colleagues in the hospitality industry, and writing books, and then I was like, oh, come, I want you to talk about your book, because I think, one, you're amazing just for writing a book. Two, for engaging with people that are going through the same thing, right? Like, either one book that my colleague wrote. He's a general manager in San Diego. It's about empathy. Uh,
Mhm.
and he sees empathy from a different perspective, right? And then another one, it's a colleague here, Larry Long Jr., from North Carolina. I've met him when he had, the book launch, and it was so special, right? Like, his reunion was in his home here in Maryland. And I see Larry, and he inspires me so much. And his book is about jolts, like what brings you that,
Yeah.
energy to your personal life, to your career. And he's a full-time speaker. But a huge, shout outs here for them. And also, I wanted to hear, since you mentioned about LinkedIn, what is the importance for you? Because you are, a high executive, and you are always there sharing your thoughts, making, and even like anecdotes, right? Like, I love that, because you were like, hey, look at it, like you did about the tomato. And then I was like,
Yes.
did something about the tomato myself, because it's something that I'm growing. I'm so proud. And it's not about, sharing day, a day in a life with a gardener, but I'm like, I have this other side of myself.
Yeah. I think I don't have I'm not selling anything thing. I'm doing what I sign up to, which is keeping it real and not showing. I mean, this is what you can be like doing, a senior job too. And it's the idea that not everybody can do it. You have to see it, to achieve it, or to, look up and see where you could head towards. But I do think it's important to keep it real, and I share stuff that's going on. I also like to have a little thought in there. This sparked me to think, how could you translate that into your work world? Because that's also how my book and my advice comes, by taking daily life and seeing everything that's up, for inspiration there. But I do a lot of it on the treadmill or walking in the morning, and pop it in as it's in there. And so it is voice recorded in, etc., rather than sort of typed out and done. And I schedule the odd one when I'm traveling. But it's stuff that inspires me on the go, because life is full of inspiration everywhere. And that's part of the story, that you don't need somebody else to get it for you. You can look out your window and be inspired if you choose to look. There's always a little lesson in there, because that's what I do.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I just started doing this voice recording to post right on LinkedIn. And I'm like, oh, I actually have to read the captions, because my accent, he always gets something else.
Yeah, yeah. No, but I enjoy doing it too. It sparks me to think when I write for others too. So
Yeah, yeah. And, really to also, your thoughts sometimes cannot translate in writing correctly. So it's always young professionals, just got out of college, don't know where to start, in hospitality or in business, what would you be your insights, your suggestions on where they can begin?
Yeah. So my suggestion is it doesn't matter where you begin, right? As long as if you get a chance to begin, I know it's tough starting. I have a family nearby, cousins and stuff going into it, right? Getting some experience and starting not just to tell other employees, but starting to see and feel what you do and don't like yourself. It's very easy to study stuff or think you like a job and you get in there in reality and you think, oh my God, I'm bored to death. Or it's not for me, or it's desk bound and I want to travel, or I can't be traveling on a plane too much. I want to work in a supermarket, all these things. You try a lot of stuff at the beginning, and actually it's not a bad thing. You're working out what you like rather than, not doing a great job. And I treat it like speed dating, which I also explain in the book I did some of, because 3 minutes when you're speed dating, it's not enough to know who you're going to marry, but it's enough time to know who you don't want to be with. And I see the early years of your career as sort of trying those things out because it's low risk. You haven't got a great deal to lose, and you can get through the stuff that you don't like, because the chances of you landing on your lifelong heartfelt dream in job one, I think, is close to zero, or certainly under 5%. Therefore, going out with an expectation that it doesn't matter, you'll start to learn to work with people, through people, for people, which is different to sort of education and training, unless you're in, sort of team-based stuff. And that's a big thing to learn. So just getting it out and trying it and not feeling bad on yourself if you've tried something and find, you know what, that's not for me. It's better to learn early on than to leave it 10 years in and then realize you're in the wrong stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also it's definitely find the people that you wanna to consume, right? Like we always see, especially, on LinkedIn, I see it all the time. People are saying, hey, look who you surround yourself with. Definitely, I've actually learned, even I keep, coming back to that because I'm like, I don't want to be negative about XYZ, right? Because I'm a positive person. I want to see things from the positive side and etc. So when I'm getting a little, towards that end, and I was like, no, no, let me switch over here. Like, also have a strong mindset, right? And who you
Mhm.
surround yourself with. Um, one last question, and it's about the digital piece. I love, right, like that you have this presence on LinkedIn, but what do you think about this branding and sharing your ideas, to the world to see, either on LinkedIn or any other platform, social media people use these days?
Yeah, I mean, I what I do digitally, I'm quite consistent, and I no longer really do Facebook or Twitter X or whatever. But I used to be, one was for family, one was for work, one was the stuff I cared about. But if you're gonna actively be out there, key things which I tell my kids to at the moment as well, you can't take social media and digital stuff away, right? So if you're not going to be you, then that's also there. And if you're not acting, know that it's out there. And I think being aware of what you put out has some staying power. Recruiters, if you're thinking about the job world, will be looking to, see who you are, search and, do stuff out there. It doesn't go away. I've tried, or my kids have been looking at what ChatGPT has to say about me, and there's a super amount out there. And it's just as well that I'm okay with what it says because it's there. So be mindful of that and don't put stuff out there that you might regret. Put it out on a whim without thinking, not just, what you want to say, but whether it's impacting other people, and sort of being mindful you can tread on a digital toe or two without meaning to, but you keep it respectful. That'd be the one thing I sort of would say. But if you're going to actively do it, to create an audience or to do something with a purpose in mind, think who it is you're targeting, and actually, don't sort of pray and spray, but think actually what is it, you're trying to target, and go for quality sort of rather than quantity. I don't have like a massive target audience because it changes with the companies I've worked in, but I write about leadership, I write about communication because I love public speaking, but I still care about diversity. So I have a couple of topics I care about. So I'll engage on those and write on those, but to try and be consistent so that people don't think, well, actually, this is fake, because when they see you being consistent on stuff, they know it's you. So my advice would be get comfortable with what you put out there. Don't worry about it. People do say to me, "Oh, you're really brave putting these stories out," but if I don't share them, then somebody doesn't get maybe an idea. And I was lucky to have ideas that come in different ways as I grew up, and I want to just give some back. But yeah, I can't take away some of those pictures or those videos or speeches I've done on other stages that people record. So I'm okay with that, but make sure you're okay with that yourself before you go into it, because I think you'll come across more convincingly too. Is that
Absolutely.
what you were sort of meaning
Yeah,
there, rather
yeah,
than me
yeah,
having some
yeah.
cybersecurity tips for you, even though I talk on that sometimes?
No, yeah, exactly. And one thing for me, being consistent and staying creative, definitely, it's 2 points that I take from actually from back when I was in the hotel, even my GM, and he's an example of GM. I like to give shout outs, right? His name is Wes Santos, and um, he always I said, come to this networking event with me and, we need to take a picture with XYZ because I want to talk about how grateful I am for that person to invite me to the networking event.
Yeah,
So, and then he said, Wilka, you opened my eyes. And I'm like, well, I appreciate that, but people are looking, right? It doesn't matter if they're acting on it right away, but they know who you are because of how consistent you've been.
yeah. And there's another thing, not just about you putting stuff out there. Like we're having a conversation today because you asked, right? There's people, and I'm obviously thrilled in return, you've read my book. And I think social media is between people. People work with people, and it's a give and take world. I think if you're just pushing and not actually giving, I think, that goes for engaging and giving other people feedback or commenting. And it's a community. It's a digital community, a massive one. You may not know everybody in there, but in the same with networking, like you've mentioned, people reach out and they want to contact somebody in my current employer, and can I help them know somebody who used to work in one of my previous employers? And it's easy for me to do and to add value to somebody. And recruiters too, they come around with stuff all the time. And while I might not be looking for a job the moment they come by, I can help connect them with somebody that might be looking. So it's not about diving into these things when you need something, but being also consistent in how you offer help and receive help rather than just the moments that you need it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I have a ask. I don't know what the answer will be, but Two Mirrors in the Sheet, I know you can purchase on Amazon the hard copy of the book. But like me, I've learned myself that I retain information with audio, and actually I learned that after my I was studying for my citizenship in the United States. I was like, oh my God, I need, to get this information out there. But how if I don't have time? So, do you have a code that you can share with the audience if they want to get an audiobook that we can definitely, highlight on LinkedIn and with all of the listeners of the podcast?
Yeah, sure. So my book's available in paperback, Kindle, and the audiobook version, and it is me reading it out, so it sounds like the same stories. What I can do is send you 10, 20 codes or whatever, a handful of codes for the audiobook, a free audiobook, if you'd like to share it with your listeners, and they can redeem those codes on Audible. Um, that's something I have in my power. I can't ship any hard copies from where I am at the moment, unfortunately, but hopefully that will be something of interest.
Yay! And I still keep the autograph you gave. Because I do have the audiobook, and again, every time that I'm feeling, oh, I had a tough day, I want to listen to something motivational, maybe, and the audio part is like you can choose the chapter, it's super cool.
Thank
Um,
you. That's
yeah,
very kind of you.
no, yeah, I'm a cheerleader, huge. Maybe I'm gonna be selling this book to everybody, not just in the United States, but also in Brazil. Oh, this is such a pleasure, Fiona. You are an amazing woman. And like I said, I look up to you. And to be honest, I'm going to share a story because we've met in person twice, right? And you were so kind. And also, I feel that some people sometimes they are afraid, right? Like you said, they're afraid to ask. We're having this conversation because I asked, but it's like, don't worry. Just a bit of my own experience too. Don't worry about, oh, is this person's gonna say no, or they never responded to my emails, or like my core, from when I started the podcast is I'm gonna interview who I think it's an inspiration for the hospitality industry. And if people say no, okay, I go to the next person. I don't need, it's a hobby that is turning into definitely I'm seeing with other eyes, right? Because it's a business too. Um, but definitely, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to get the no's because it will happen. But like, just be brave because these relationships, right, that you haven't, or if you hold yourself back, you didn't try, you don't know how it's going to flourish in the end of the day. So
Yeah.
that's a
You
tip.
never know. So don't set yourself a low expectation. If you get a no, it's also fine. You brush it up and start again. So there's no shame in having no as well.
Absolutely. Fiona, thank you so much for being part
Thank
of
you
the
so much.
Leadership
Been
Talks
a pleasure
podcast.
talking to you.
Oh, it's
Thank you.
been
Take care.
amazing. Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too. Take care.